Tom Bradley had always prided himself on maintaining an organized living space, but 3 months of working double shifts on Epsilon Station's atmospheric processors had turned his apartment into what could generously be described as a disaster zone. Empty food containers competed for space with technical manuals, while his laundry had achieved what appeared to be sentience and was making territorial claims on most of his furniture. "This is pathetic," Tom muttered, surveying the chaos while trying to find a clean uniform for his next shift. "I'm a certified space station engineer, and I can't even manage basic domestic logistics." The solution had come through station services, which offered various support programs for overworked personnel. The Interspecies Employment Initiative provided qualified domestic assistance from partner worlds, allowing both species to benefit from cultural and economic exchange. "Mr. Bradley," the coordinator had explained during their interview, "we have an excellent candidate from the Pixari homeworld. Small stature, meticulous attention to detail, and enthusiasm for human living spaces. Perfect for apartment maintenance and organization." Tom had expected someone professional and efficient. He hadn't expected Kira. She stood barely 3 feet tall, with delicate pointed ears that twitched when she was concentrating and enormous eyes that seemed to absorb every detail of her surroundings. Her species' natural coloring gave her skin a subtle iridescent quality that shifted between pale blue and silver depending on the lighting, and she moved with quick, precise gestures that reminded Tom of a hummingbird. "Mr. Bradley," Kira had said during their first meeting, her voice carrying musical undertones that made even simple statements sound like song lyrics. "I am so excited to work with human domestic systems. Your species has such fascinating approaches to spatial organization." "It's just Tom," he'd replied, trying not to stare at her alien features. "And I should warn you, my approach to spatial organization is mostly put things wherever they fit and hope for the best." "Oh, that's perfectly normal for humans working intensive schedules," Kira had said with the kind of understanding that suggested she'd studied human psychology extensively. Pixari domestic science includes comprehensive protocols for optimizing living spaces based on occupant behavior patterns and work stress factors. Tom had hired her on the spot, partly because of her obvious competence and partly because her enthusiasm was oddly infectious. Working with someone who found human domestic habits genuinely fascinating seemed preferable to the standard cleaning service that treated his apartment like a contamination site. Over the following weeks, Kira had transformed his living space with an efficiency that bordered on magical. She somehow knew exactly how Tom liked his tools organized, which books he actually read versus which ones were just for reference, and how to arrange his furniture to maximize both comfort and functionality. More impressively, she managed all this while being completely unobtrusive during his off hours. "Kira," Tom had said after the first week, "this is incredible. How did you know I prefer my technical manuals sorted by system type rather than alphabetically?" "Observation and logical analysis," Kira had replied, her ears twitching with what Tom was learning to recognize as pride. "Humans typically organize information based on usage patterns rather than arbitrary categorization systems. Your work focuses on atmospheric and environmental systems, so grouping related materials together reduces time spent searching for information." "That's actually brilliant. Thank you. Pixari education emphasizes understanding the subjects we serve. Making your life more efficient makes me very happy." Tom had been careful to maintain professional boundaries, despite Kira's obvious enthusiasm for her work and her endearing habit of asking questions about human culture. She was his employee, and he was determined to keep their relationship appropriate and respectful. That determination lasted exactly as long as it took for the emergency alarms to start screaming. The decompression alert caught Tom in his kitchen, reviewing maintenance schedules while Kira organized his supply cabinets with typical Pixari precision. The station's emergency systems activated immediately, sealing blast doors and initializing atmospheric protection protocols. "Hull breach in residential sector 7. The station's AI announced with mechanical calm. All personnel evacuate immediately to designated emergency shelters. Blast door closure in 60 seconds. Tom's apartment was in Sector 8, safely outside the immediate danger zone, but his emergency training kicked in automatically. He moved toward his personal shelter while mentally cataloging evacuation procedures. Then he realized Kira wasn't with him. "Kira," Tom called, looking around his apartment. "I'm in the corridor." Her voice came back, high and frightened. "The blast door is closing, and I can't reach the shelter." Tom looked through his doorway to see Kira trapped in the main corridor as the massive blast door descended with inexorable mechanical precision. She was too small to trigger the safety sensors and too far from any emergency shelter to reach safety before the door sealed. Without thinking, Tom lunged into the corridor. He covered the distance in 3 strides, scooping up Kira just as the blast door slammed shut behind them. The corridor atmosphere was already thinning as emergency pumps diverted air to stable sections, and Tom could feel the pressure differential trying to pull them toward the breach. "Emergency shelter now," Tom gasped, carrying Kira toward his apartment's emergency room. They made it inside just as the corridor pressure dropped to dangerous levels. Tom sealed the shelter door and activated the independent life support systems, finally allowing himself to breathe as stable atmosphere surrounded them. "Are you hurt?" Tom asked, setting Kira down gently and checking her for injuries. Kira stared up at him with enormous eyes, her usually cheerful expression replaced by shock and something Tom couldn't quite identify. She was trembling, whether from fear or atmospheric effects he couldn't tell. "You saved me," she whispered, her musical voice barely audible. "You risked your life to save mine." "Of course I did," Tom said, kneeling down to her level. "You're my responsibility. I couldn't just leave you there." Something shifted in Kira's expression, a change so profound that Tom felt like he was seeing her for the first time. The professional distance she'd maintained despite her enthusiasm disappeared completely, replaced by an intensity that made him suddenly aware of how small and fragile she looked in the emergency shelter's harsh lighting. "Tom," Kira said, and the way she spoke his name carried weight he hadn't heard before. "You saved my life. Anyone would have done the same thing," Tom replied, though he was beginning to suspect that wasn't entirely true. Kira reached out with one small hand and touched his arm, her alien features serious in a way that suggested he had no idea what he'd just gotten himself into. "No," she said quietly. "They wouldn't have. And now everything is different." Tom woke up the next morning to discover that Kira had apparently decided sleep was optional and his apartment needed to be transformed into something resembling a shrine to human comfort. Every surface gleamed, his clothes were organized with military precision, and she'd somehow acquired fresh food that definitely wasn't available through normal station commissary channels. "Good morning, Tom," Kira said with the kind of bright enthusiasm that suggested she'd been awake for hours. "I prepared your breakfast according to optimal nutritional requirements for humans working high-stress engineering positions." Tom stared at the elaborate meal spread across his small dining table. "Kira, where did you get fresh fruit? The hydroponics bay hasn't had a successful harvest in weeks." "I have connections with the Altarian trade delegation," Kira replied proudly, her ears twitching with satisfaction. "They were very happy to provide quality food for the human who saved a Pixari life." "You told them about the emergency?" "Of course. What you did was very significant. Life debt is serious business in Pixari culture." Tom felt a sinking sensation in his stomach. "Life debt?" Kira's expression became serious, her usual cheerful demeanor replaced by something that looked almost ceremonial. "When someone saves a Pixari from certain death, we become bonded to them. It's not just gratitude, it's a fundamental relationship change that affects our entire social structure." "What kind of relationship change?" "I belong to you now," Kira said simply, as if discussing the weather. "You are my protector, and I am your protected. This creates permanent obligations for both of us." Tom sat down heavily, his breakfast suddenly losing all appeal. "Kira, I don't want to own anyone. You're my employee, not my property." "Not property," Kira corrected gently. "Protected dependent. It's different. You have responsibility for my well-being, and I have responsibility for your comfort and safety. It's a partnership, but not an equal one." "That sounds like slavery with extra steps." Kira's ears drooped slightly. "I understand why it seems strange to humans. Your species values independence and individual autonomy. But Pixari society is built on interdependence and protective relationships. What you did yesterday wasn't just rescue. It was acceptance of permanent responsibility." Tom rubbed his temples, feeling the beginning of a headache. "What if I don't want permanent responsibility?" What if I just want to keep our relationship professional? Then you would be rejecting the life debt, which would be. Kira paused, searching for the right words. Culturally catastrophic for me. It would mean I have no place in Pixari society and no protection in human society either. So I'm stuck with you? Kira's expression fell, and Tom immediately felt terrible for phrasing it that way. I'm sorry, she said quietly. I know this is overwhelming. I should have explained Pixari customs before accepting employment with humans. Tom looked at her dejected posture and felt like a complete bastard. No, Kira, I'm sorry. I didn't mean it like that. You're not a burden. I just don't understand the cultural implications of what happened. Would it help if I explained? Please. Kira moved to sit across from him, her small form perched on the edge of a chair that had been designed for beings twice her size. Pixari evolved as a communal species. We survived by forming protective bonds with stronger individuals who could defend us from predators. When someone saves our life, our instincts recognize them as our designated protector. And that creates the life debt. The life debt formalizes what our biology already recognizes. I'm now neurologically conditioned to seek your approval, ensure your comfort, and position myself to receive your protection. It's not a choice. It's how my brain is wired to function now. Tom stared at her, processing the implications. So when you say you belong to me, you mean it literally. I mean it biologically. My emotional well-being is now tied to your welfare and approval. I'll experience anxiety when separated from you, distress when you're unhappy, and satisfaction when I can contribute to your comfort. Tom struggled to find appropriate words. That's a lot of pressure for someone who just did what anyone would do in an emergency. Most humans wouldn't have risked their life for a Pixari employee, Kira said matter-of-factly. The risk assessment was unfavorable. You could have died trying to save someone who isn't even the same species. The fact that you acted without hesitation tells me you're the kind of person who deserves Pixari loyalty, or the kind of person who makes stupid decisions under pressure. Kira's ears perked up slightly. Are you saying you regret saving me? No, Tom said quickly. Absolutely not. I'm saying I don't know how to handle the consequences. Would it help if I demonstrated how the relationship works? Tom wasn't sure he wanted to know, but he nodded anyway. Kira immediately brightened, returning to her usual energetic demeanor. Excellent. First, your apartment security. I've already identified 3 potential vulnerability points and developed countermeasures. Second, your nutritional requirements. I've established supply relationships with 4 different species to ensure optimal diet variety. Third, your work efficiency. I've analyzed your engineering projects and identified several areas where Pixari technical skills could provide support. You've been busy. I've been preparing to fulfill my obligations. Oh, and I've moved my sleeping area to just outside your bedroom. Pixari protective instincts require proximity during vulnerable periods like sleep. Tom felt that sinking sensation again. Kira, you can't sleep outside my door like a guard dog. Would you prefer I sleep inside your room? No. That's not. We need to establish some boundaries here. Kira tilted her head, considering. What kind of boundaries? The kind that let you maintain some personal independence while I figure out how to be a responsible protector without losing my mind. That seems reasonable. Though I should mention that extended separation causes significant stress for bonded Pixari. We'll need to work within my biological limitations. Tom looked at Kira's earnest expression and realized his life had just become infinitely more complicated. How significant is significant stress? Physical symptoms after 4 hours of separation, anxiety attacks after 8 hours, potential psychological breakdown after 12 hours. Wonderful. So I have a live-in dependent who can't be away from me for longer than half a work shift. I prefer to think of it as having a dedicated personal assistant who happens to be neurologically invested in your well-being, Kira said cheerfully. Also, I make excellent coffee, and I've already optimized your tool organization system. Tom found himself laughing despite the absurdity of the situation. You know what, Kira? Let's figure this out one day at a time. But we're definitely going to need some professional advice about how to make this work. Station Psychological Services has specialists in interspecies relationship dynamics, Kira suggested. Though I should warn you, most of them will probably be fascinated by our situation. Human Pixari life debt bonds are quite rare. Because most humans don't rescue their alien domestic employees from decompression emergencies, Because most humans aren't worth bonding to, Kira said with simple sincerity that made Tom's chest tighten unexpectedly. As Tom headed off to work with Kira's promise to have dinner ready when he returned, he reflected that his carefully organized bachelor life had just become something he definitely hadn't signed up for. But looking at Kira's obvious happiness as she planned his day, he wasn't entirely sure that was a bad thing. Tom's first attempt at helping Kira develop independence involved encouraging her to attend the station's weekly social mixer without him. This plan lasted exactly 43 minutes before she appeared in Engineering Base 7, pale and trembling, asking permission to return to his apartment. "I tried," Kira said, her usual cheerful demeanor replaced by obvious distress. "But there were too many people, and you weren't there, and I kept thinking about what would happen if there was another emergency, and I couldn't reach you." Tom looked up from the atmospheric processor he'd been calibrating, noting how Kira's ears were flat against her head and her hands were shaking slightly. "Did something specific happen at the mixer?" "Ensign Williams asked me to dance, and I panicked. Not because he was inappropriate, but because accepting meant moving further away from where you were working. My brain just refused to cooperate." Tom set down his tools and gave Kira his full attention. "What did it feel like?" "Like drowning, but in air. Like every instinct I have was screaming that I was making a dangerous mistake by being away from my protector." Kira wrapped her arms around herself, looking smaller than usual. "I know it's irrational. I know this station is safe and that you're not actually in danger when I'm not around. But knowing something intellectually and feeling it emotionally are different things." "Come here," Tom said, gesturing to a nearby maintenance stool. Kira approached cautiously, climbing onto the stool that put her at a more comfortable height for conversation. Tom noticed that her trembling decreased as soon as she was within arm's reach. "Better?" he asked. "Much better. The anxiety is already fading." Kira managed a weak smile. "I'm sorry I interrupted your work. I know you don't want to deal with my psychological issues during your shift." "Kira, your psychological issues are directly related to something I did. That makes them my responsibility too." Tom paused, considering his next words carefully. "What if we tried a different approach? Instead of forcing independence, what if we worked on expanding your comfort zone gradually?" "What do you mean?" "Well, you're obviously fine when you're close to me. What's the maximum distance you can manage without anxiety?" Kira considered the question seriously. "In a familiar environment with clear sight lines? Maybe 20 meters. In an unfamiliar environment, or one with obstacles blocking my view of you? Much less. So we start with 20 meters in familiar territory and work up from there." "That could work," Kira said, her ears perking up slightly. "Progressive exposure therapy is a recognized treatment for anxiety disorders." "You've studied human psychology?" Pixari Domestic Science Education includes courses on the psychology of all common client species. Understanding how your minds work helps us provide better service. Tom found himself impressed once again by the depth of Kira's education. "What else did they teach you about humans?" "Behavioral patterns, stress responses, nutritional requirements, social dynamics, relationship structures." Kira paused. "Actually, there was a whole section on human mating and pair bonding practices. Very complex compared to most species. I can imagine. For instance, humans often form romantic attachments to individuals they work closely with, especially in high-stress situations or after shared traumatic experiences. The psychological literature suggests this is an adaptive response that promotes group survival through increased cooperation and mutual protection." Tom felt heat rising in his cheeks. "That's very thorough research. Is that relevant to our situation?" Kira asked with the kind of innocent curiosity that suggested she had no idea how loaded that question was. What do you mean?" "Well, we work closely together, we've shared a traumatic experience, and we're now in a protective relationship with increased cooperation and mutual benefit. According to human psychological patterns, there's a statistical probability that romantic attachment could develop." Tom stared at Kira, trying to process whether she was making an observation or a suggestion. "Are you asking if I'm attracted to you?" "I'm asking if the possibility concerns you. Because Pixari life debt bonds sometimes evolve into romantic partnerships when the protector and protected are compatible. It's considered normal and healthy within our cultural context. And if they're not compatible, then the bond remains purely protective, which is also normal and healthy." The key is honest communication about expectations and boundaries. Tom realized they were having the kind of conversation he'd never expected to have with his alien domestic assistant. Kira, can I ask you something directly? Of course. Are you attracted to me? Romantically, I mean. Kira's ears twitched as she considered the question. I find you appealing in multiple ways. You're intelligent, competent, kind, and you've proven yourself worthy of trust. Whether that constitutes romantic attraction depends on how you define the term. How do you define it? The desire to form an exclusive emotional and physical partnership that goes beyond protective bonding. Kira paused. By that definition, yes, I think I am attracted to you. But I'm also aware that life-debt psychology might be influencing my feelings in ways I can't objectively assess. Tom felt something shift in his chest, a recognition that their relationship had moved into territory he definitely hadn't expected when he'd hired a domestic assistant. And you're telling me this because? Because honest communication about expectations and boundaries, Kira repeated. If romantic feelings are developing, we should address them directly rather than pretending they don't exist. That's very mature of you. Pixari culture emphasizes emotional honesty. Pretending feelings don't exist leads to poor decision-making and relationship dysfunction. Tom was quiet for several minutes, processing what Kira had told him. When he finally spoke, his voice was careful. What if I told you that I've been having similar thoughts? That I find you attractive and intelligent, and that I enjoy your company more than I probably should? I would ask if those feelings concern you. They terrify me, Tom admitted. You're emotionally dependent on me because of a traumatic experience. Any romantic relationship between us would have inherent power imbalances that could be harmful to you. That's a valid concern, Kira agreed. Though I should point out that Pixari human romantic relationships have been successful in other cases, with proper support and clear communication. Other cases? The psychological literature includes several documented partnerships. The key factors for success were mutual respect, ongoing counseling, and time to ensure the Pixari partner had developed sufficient independence to consent meaningfully to the romantic component. Tom found himself laughing despite the seriousness of the conversation. So you're saying we need professional help and a lot of patience. I'm saying that if we're both interested in exploring romantic possibilities, there are ethical ways to do so. But it would require careful navigation and probably some uncomfortable conversations with station psychological services. Are you interested in exploring those possibilities? Kira's smile was radiant. Very much so, but only if we can do it in a way that respects both of our psychological needs and cultural backgrounds. Tom looked at her earnest expression and realized that his rescue of a tiny alien maid had led to the most complex and potentially rewarding relationship opportunity of his life. Well, he said finally, I've always preferred complicated projects to simple ones. Good, Kira said, her ears perking up with obvious relief. Because nothing about this situation is going to be simple. The meeting with Dr. Sarah Chun from Station Psychological Services took place in a comfortable office that had clearly been designed to accommodate multiple species. Tom found himself sitting in a human-sized chair, while Kira perched on a specialized seat that put her at the same height, creating an illusion of equality that he hoped wasn't just an illusion. So, Dr. Chun said, reviewing her notes with the kind of professional calm that suggested she'd dealt with stranger situations than human Pixari trauma bonding. You're concerned about the power dynamics in your developing relationship. That's putting it mildly, Tom replied. Kira is emotionally dependent on me because of a life-threatening situation. Any romantic relationship that develops from that foundation seems ethically questionable. And you, Kira? How do you view the situation? Kira's ears twitched as she considered her response. I understand Tom's concerns, but I think he's underestimating my agency. Yes, I'm bonded to him. But that doesn't make me incapable of making informed decisions about my own feelings and desires. Can you elaborate on that? The life-debt bond creates emotional attachment and protective instincts, but it doesn't override my individual personality or preferences. I'm attracted to Tom because of who he is, not just because he saved my life. Dr. Chin made notes while Tom tried to process what Kira was saying. Tom, what's your understanding of Pixari psychology and bonding patterns? Honestly, I'm learning as I go. Everything I know comes from what Kira has told me and some basic research I've done since this started. That's not uncommon. Human-Pixari relationships are relatively rare, partly because of the complexity of the bonding process. Dr. Chun turned to a display screen that showed various psychological assessments. I've been reviewing the literature, and there are some important factors to consider, such as, first, Pixari life-debt bonds are not permanent psychological dependency. With proper support, bonded individuals can develop independence while maintaining the protective relationship. Second, romantic evolution of protective bonds is normal and healthy when both parties consent freely. Tom felt a flutter of hope. So it's possible for this to work? It's possible, but it requires careful management and ongoing evaluation. Kira, I'd like to assess your current psychological state and independence level. The evaluation that followed was thorough and occasionally uncomfortable. Dr. Chin asked Kira detailed questions about her thought processes, decision-making capabilities, and emotional responses to various scenarios involving Tom. Based on these results, Dr. Chun said finally, Kira shows signs of emotional attachment but retains clear individual judgment and decision-making capacity. The bonding hasn't compromised her ability to consent to relationship changes. What does that mean in practical terms? Tom asked. It means that if you both want to explore romantic possibilities, you can do so ethically, provided you maintain certain safeguards. What kind of safeguards? Regular counseling sessions, clear communication protocols, and gradual development rather than rushing into physical or emotional intimacy. Also, Kira needs to continue developing independence and social connections outside of your relationship. Kira nodded enthusiastically. I can work on the independence aspects. I've already identified several station activities that interest me, such as the Engineering Auxiliary Program, the Interspecies Cultural Exchange Group, and the Amateur Botany Club. All activities where I can contribute skills while building relationships with other beings. Tom looked at Kira with surprise. When did you research all of this? While you were sleeping, Kira replied matter-of-factly. Pixari require less sleep than humans, so I had several hours to explore station databases and social programs. Dr. Chin smiled. That's exactly the kind of initiative we want to see. Tom, how do you feel about Kira developing outside interests and friendships? Honestly, relieved. I was worried that I was her entire social world, which seemed unhealthy for both of us. Good. Now, let's discuss practical steps for relationship development. The plan that emerged was both structured and flexible. Tom and Kira would spend designated time together exploring their compatibility while also pursuing separate interests and friendships. Regular counseling sessions would monitor their progress and address any issues that arose. The key, Dr. Chin explained, is ensuring that your romantic relationship develops independently of the protective bond, not because of it. How do we tell the difference? Tom asked. Time and experience. If your feelings for each other grow as Kira becomes more independent, that suggests genuine compatibility. Pixari technical education emphasized efficiency and optimization, but human engineering approaches focus on creative solutions and adaptive thinking. I'd like to learn how to combine both perspectives. That could be valuable for station operations. That's the idea. I want to contribute meaningfully to this community, not just exist as your dependent. Tom felt a surge of admiration for Kira's determination. You know, when I first hired you, I thought I was getting a domestic assistant. I had no idea I was getting a partner. Life rarely follows our expectations, Kira said with a smile. But sometimes the unexpected turns out better than what we planned. Speaking of unexpected, Commander Hayes wants to meet with both of us tomorrow. Something about your status on the station and potential career opportunities. Kira's eyes widened. Career opportunities? Apparently, word has gotten around about your technical skills and cultural knowledge. The station administration is interested in your potential contributions beyond domestic services. That's wonderful. And terrifying. Why terrifying? Because it means proving myself to people who don't have protective bonds with me. What if I'm not as capable as everyone thinks? Tom stopped walking and turned to face Kira directly. Kira, you've optimized systems that professional engineers couldn't improve. You've analyzed cultural dynamics that trained diplomats missed. You've demonstrated intelligence and competence consistently since the day we met. You might be biased in my favor. Maybe. But Commander Hayes isn't, and neither are the other department heads who've been requesting your consultation on various projects. Kira was quiet for a moment, processing what Tom had told her. When she spoke, her voice carried new confidence. You know what? You're right. I am capable. And whether our romantic relationship works out or not, I'm going to build a life here that I can be proud of. Tom felt his chest tighten with something that might have been love. That's the most attractive thing you've ever said. Really? More attractive than when I optimized your tool storage system? Much more attractive than the tool storage system. Good to know I have multiple appeal categories, Kira said with a grin that showed her pointed teeth. Because I plan to be irresistible by the time we finish this relationship development process. As they continued their walk through the station, Tom reflected that rescuing his tiny alien maid had led to the most complex and promising relationship of his life. Whatever happened next, it definitely wouldn't be boring. 3 weeks into their structured relationship development program, Tom discovered that watching Kira grow more confident and independent was simultaneously the most attractive and most terrifying thing he'd ever experienced. She'd thrown herself into station activities with typical Pixar enthusiasm, and the results were both impressive and occasionally chaotic. So, Tom said, reviewing the daily reports while Kira organized his technical manuals with her usual precision, apparently you've revolutionized the hydroponics bay, solved a diplomatic crisis between the Altarian traders and the Centauri merchants, and somehow convinced Chief Engineer Patterson that Pixari miniaturization techniques could improve our power distribution systems. It's been a productive week, Kira replied cheerfully, though Tom noticed she kept glancing at him while she worked. The hydroponics issue was just basic spatial optimization. The diplomatic crisis required understanding that both species were arguing about honor when they actually meant profit margins. And the power distribution improvements are obvious once you consider three-dimensional routing instead of traditional planar configurations. All of which is brilliant and impressive and makes me realize I've been seriously underutilizing your abilities. Thank you. Though I should mention that Dr. Chun wants to see us this afternoon. Something about evaluating our progress and addressing new developments in our relationship dynamic. Tom felt a familiar flutter of nervousness. The counseling sessions had been helpful but consistently challenging, forcing both of them to examine their motivations and feelings with uncomfortable honesty. Any idea what kind of new developments she wants to discuss? Kira's ears twitched with what Tom had learned to recognize as embarrassment. I may have mentioned that my feelings for you have intensified since I started developing outside interests. Intensified how? Well, when I was completely dependent on you, my attachment felt necessary and protective. Now that I have other relationships and activities, my feelings for you feel more voluntary and deeper. Tom set down his reports, giving Kira his full attention. That's actually really good news, isn't it? According to the psychological literature, yes. It suggests that my romantic attachment is genuine rather than trauma-based. Kira paused in her organizing. But it also means I'm falling in love with you more seriously than I initially expected. And that's a problem because you might not be developing feelings at the same pace, and unrequited love in a protective bonding situation can become psychologically complicated. Tom considered this, noting how Kira's usual confidence seemed to waver when discussing their personal relationship. What if I told you that watching you become more independent and confident has made me more attracted to you, not less? I would ask if you're attracted to my independence or to me as an individual. Both. Your independence shows me who you really are when you're not focused solely on my needs. And who you are is someone I find incredibly appealing. Kira's expression brightened considerably. That's very encouraging. Though I should warn you that Dr. Chun will probably want specifics about the nature of your attraction and whether you're prepared for the complications of an interspecies relationship. What kind of complications? Physical compatibility questions, cultural difference navigation, long-term commitment expectations, reproductive considerations. Tom felt heat rising in his cheeks. Reproductive considerations. Human Pixari hybrid offspring are theoretically possible, but require medical intervention and careful genetic compatibility screening. Dr. Chin will want to know if that's something you've considered. I hadn't gotten that far in my thinking yet. That's normal. Humans typically don't consider reproductive planning until relationships are well established. But Pixari life pair bonding includes family planning discussions from the beginning. Life pair bonding. Kira's ears drooped slightly. The Pixari equivalent of human marriage. It's what protective bonds evolve into when they become romantic partnerships. Tom stared at her, processing the implications. Are you saying that if our relationship continues developing, you'll expect marriage-level commitment? I'm saying that Pixari psychology doesn't really distinguish between serious romantic relationships and permanent partnerships. We tend to bond completely or not at all. That's intense. Very intense. Which is why Dr. Chun wants to discuss expectation management and compatibility assessment. The counseling session that afternoon was exactly as thorough and uncomfortable as Tom had anticipated. Clear communication about his feelings and intentions, even if those feelings are still developing. I don't need immediate commitment, but I need to know that he's genuinely considering it as a possibility. Dr. Chun turned to Tom. Can you provide that kind of communication? I think so. What I can say honestly is that I care about Kira deeply. I find her attractive and intelligent and wonderful to be around, and I'm interested in seeing where our relationship leads. I can't promise life pair bonding right now, but I can promise serious consideration and emotional honesty. And if you ultimately decide that permanent commitment isn't right for you, Tom looked at Kira, noting the anxiety in her expression. Then I'll tell her honestly and help her find the support she needs to handle that disappointment. But I'll also continue to honor the protective bond regardless of the romantic outcome. That's exactly the kind of assurance that helps manage Pixari relationship anxiety, Dr. Chin noted. Kira, does that feel adequate for now? Yes. Knowing that Tom takes our relationship seriously and that the protective bond is stable regardless of romantic developments gives me the security I need to be patient with the natural development process. After the session, Tom and Kira walked through the station's commercial district, processing their conversation and enjoying the bustling activity of multiple species conducting trade and social interactions. Can I ask you something personal? Tom said as they paused at a viewport showing the star field beyond the station. Everything about our relationship is personal now, Kira pointed out. What do you want to know? What does life pair bonding actually involve? Not just the emotional commitment, but the practical aspects. Shared living space, combined resources, cooperative decision-making on all major life choices, and typically the establishment of a family unit. Kira paused. Also, for Pixari, it includes telepathic bonding that creates permanent emotional connection. Telepathic bonding? Pixari can form limited telepathic links with life partners, regardless of species. It allows emotional sharing and enhanced communication. Very intimate, but not invasive. Tom felt something shift in his understanding of what Kira was offering. You're talking about a level of connection that goes beyond anything in human relationship experience. Yes, which is why it's important that you understand what you're considering before making any commitments. And you want this with me? All of it. Kira's smile was radiant. I want everything with you, Tom. But only if you want it too, and only when you're ready for it. As they continued their walk, Tom reflected that his tiny alien Maid had become someone he was falling in love with in ways he'd never experienced before. The thought was both exhilarating and terrifying, but for the first time since their relationship had begun evolving, he found himself genuinely excited about the possibilities rather than just worried about the complications. You know, Tom said, taking Kira's small hand in his. I think I'm starting to understand what you mean about voluntary feelings being stronger than necessary ones. Really, because right now, I don't want to be anywhere but here with you, and that has nothing to do with protective bonds or obligation. Kira's ears perked up with obvious joy. That's the most romantic thing anyone has ever said to me. Just wait until I figure out what I'm actually doing, Tom said with a grin. I have a feeling I'm going to get much better at this. The critical station repair project came at exactly the right time to test everything Tom and Kira had learned about working together as genuine partners rather than protector and dependent. A cascade failure in the project. Tom looked at Kira's determined expression and realized that refusing would undermine everything they'd worked toward in their relationship development. All right, but we planned this operation meticulously, and if anything goes, Tom was quiet for several long moments, processing the implications of what Kira was proposing. When he spoke, his voice was steady. Do it, but maintain constant communication, and if you experience any distress at all, you abort immediately. Understood. Beginning modified approach now. The 12 minutes that followed were the longest of Tom's life. He watched Kira's vital signs while listening to her steady commentary on the repair progress, fighting every instinct that told him to extract her immediately. Secondary blockage cleared, Kira reported finally. Sonic disruptor secured, returning to planned route. All systems nominal. Outstanding work, Kira. Return to extraction point. When Kira emerged from the atmospheric processing chambers 40 minutes later, tired but triumphant, Tom felt a surge of pride that had nothing to do with protective bonding and everything to do with genuine partnership. How do you feel? Tom asked, helping her out of the modified environmental suit. Accomplished, Kira replied with a radiant smile. We saved the station's atmospheric system, and we did it together. You saved the atmospheric system. I just provided technical support. We were a team. Your expertise and guidance made my physical contribution possible. Chief Engineer Patterson approached with obvious satisfaction. Excellent work, both of you. Miss Kira, I'd like to discuss permanent technical assignment possibilities when you're ready. I'm very interested, Kira replied. Though I should mention that any assignment would need to accommodate my partnership arrangements with Tom. Partnership arrangements? Tom felt heat rise in his cheeks. We're exploring expanded cooperation in both professional and personal contexts. Oh, Patterson's expression suggested understanding. Well, the engineering department values effective partnerships. We'll work something out. That evening, Tom and Kira celebrated their successful collaboration with dinner in his apartment, which had become their shared living space through gradual, natural evolution. You were incredible today, Tom said, watching Kira organize their technical notes with characteristic precision. Professional, competent, brave, and absolutely essential to the mission's success. Thank you. Though I have to admit, part of me was terrified the entire time. Only part of you. The other part was exhilarated. Working with you on something that important, contributing meaningfully to station safety, proving that our partnership could handle real challenges. It felt like everything we've been building toward. Tom looked at Kira across their small dining table, noting how her confidence had grown over the past months and how natural their collaboration had become. Can I tell you something? Always. Watching you today made me realize that I'm not just attracted to you or fond of you or interested in exploring our relationship possibilities. I'm actually falling in love with you. Kira's ears perked up with obvious joy. Really, really, not because of the protective bond or the trauma connection or any of the psychological complications we've been worried about. Because of who you are and how amazing you are and how much better my life is when you're in it. That's exactly what I hoped you would eventually feel. And what I'm feeling is voluntary and genuine and completely independent of any obligations or dependencies. Kira moved around the table to sit closer to Tom, her small form fitting perfectly against his side. So what happens now? Now we continue building something extraordinary together, as equals, as partners, and as two beings who chose each other because we make each other better. I love you too, Tom, Kira said softly. Completely, voluntarily, and permanently. As they sat together planning their future as both professional partners and romantic companions, Tom reflected that grabbing his tiny alien made to save her life had led to saving his own from loneliness and showing him possibilities for love he'd never imagined. Sometimes the most important rescues went both directions. 6 months after their successful atmospheric repair operation, Tom and Kira had settled into a partnership that worked on every level. Their professional collaboration had earned them recognition throughout the station. Their romantic relationship had developed into something deeper and more stable than either had initially expected, and their living arrangement had evolved into genuine shared domesticity that felt completely natural. Station Commander Hayes wants to see us this morning, Kira said, reviewing their shared schedule while Tom finished his coffee. Something about a permanent position offer and official partnership recognition. Partnership recognition? Formal acknowledgement of our working relationship and personal commitment according to both human and Pixari legal frameworks. Basically, the station equivalent of marriage registration. Tom felt a familiar flutter of nervousness mixed with excitement. Are we ready for that level of official recognition? I think we've been ready for months. The question is whether you're comfortable with public acknowledgement of our commitment. You mean, am I ready to tell the entire station that I'm in love with my former domestic assistant who saved my engineering projects while I saved her life? That's one way to phrase it, Kira said with amusement. Though I prefer announcing the partnership between two equals who found love through shared challenges and mutual growth. Your version is better. The meeting with Commander Hayes took place in her office, which had been modified to accommodate multiple species with varying size and environmental requirements. Tom and Kira sat across from the commander's desk, with Kira in a specialized chair that put her at an appropriate height for formal discussions. I'll get straight to the point, Commander Hayes said with characteristic directness. Your collaboration over the past year has been exceptional. The atmospheric repair operation, the hydroponics optimization project, and the recent improvements to our defensive systems have all exceeded expectations. Thank you, Commander, Tom replied. We work well together. That's an understatement. Your partnership has become a model for interspecies cooperation throughout the station. Which brings me to my proposal. Hayes activated a display showing organizational charts and position descriptions. I'm offering Kira a permanent position as technical specialist with full employee benefits and status. Tom, you're being promoted to senior engineer with expanded project authority. Both positions are structured to accommodate your working partnership. Kira's ears perked up with obvious excitement. What would my responsibilities include? Specialized technical operations requiring Pixari capabilities, consultation on interspecies cooperation projects, and collaborative engineering work with Tom's team. Essentially, formalizing what you've already been doing. And the personal relationship aspect? Tom asked. The station recognizes domestic partnerships between consenting adults regardless of species, provided both parties have independent employment status and psychological clearance. Dr. Chun has recommended approval for both requirements. Tom looked at Kira, noting her radiant expression and the way her small hand had found his during the conversation. What do you think? I think it's perfect, Kira replied. Professional recognition, personal acceptance, and the foundation for building whatever future we want together. Then we accept, Tom said, squeezing Kira's hand gently. The partnership ceremony that followed was a blend of human administrative formality and Pixari bonding traditions, held in the station's community center with friends and colleagues from multiple species in attendance. Tom found himself wearing formal attire while Kira wore traditional Pixari ceremonial garments that somehow managed to be both elegant and practical. This feels surreal, Tom whispered as they waited for the ceremony to begin. Good surreal or bad surreal? Kira asked. Definitely good surreal. A year ago, I was a lonely engineer who couldn't keep his apartment clean. Now I'm about to commit to permanent partnership with the most extraordinary being I've ever met, who also keeps your apartment clean. That's just a bonus at this point. The ceremony itself was brief but meaningful, incorporating legal recognition of their partnership under station regulations while acknowledging the cultural significance of their commitment according to both human and Pixari traditions. Tom Bradley and Kira of the Pixari homeworld, Commander Hayes announced. You have demonstrated that partnership between different species can create something stronger and more valuable than either could achieve alone. It is my privilege to recognize your commitment officially and welcome you both to your new positions aboard Epsilon Station. The celebration that followed included colleagues from every department on the station, with entertainment and food representing dozens of different worlds. Tom found himself dancing to music he'd never heard, while Kira demonstrated that Pixari celebration traditions involved a surprising amount of acrobatic movement. Having fun? Tom asked during a quiet moment between festivities. The most fun I've ever had, Kira replied, slightly breathless from the dancing. Though I should warn you that Pixari partnership ceremonies traditionally conclude with the bonding ritual we discussed, the telepathic connection, if you're ready for it. It's not required for our legal partnership, but it would complete the cultural commitment according to my people's traditions. Tom considered the implications of permanent telepathic bonding with Kira. The thought was both intimate and slightly overwhelming, but also appealing in ways he hadn't fully anticipated. What would it feel like? Shared emotional awareness, enhanced communication, and the ability to sense each other's well-being across distances. Not invasive, but definitely connected. And it's permanent. For the lifetime of both partners. It's the deepest form of commitment in Pixari culture. Tom looked into Kira's eyes, seeing hope and love and the kind of trust that came from months of building something extraordinary together. I want everything with you, Kira. All of it. The bonding ritual took place in the privacy of their shared apartment, with Kira guiding Tom through traditional processes that created mental and emotional connections between them. The sensation was unlike anything Tom had ever experienced, a gentle merging of consciousness that left him feeling more complete and connected than he'd known was possible. "How do you feel?" Kira asked softly as the bonding settled into place. "Like I found the missing piece of myself that I didn't know was missing," Tom replied, noting how he could sense Kira's emotions as clearly as his own. "And you?" "Perfect. Complete. Home." As they settled into their new life as officially recognized partners, Tom reflected on the journey that had brought them to this moment. What had begun as an emergency rescue had evolved into the most meaningful relationship of his life, proving that love could develop from the most unexpected circumstances when nurtured with patience, respect, and genuine care. "Any regrets about bonding permanently with your former domestic assistant?" Kira asked, apparently sensing his contemplative mood through their new connection. "Only that it took us so long to get here," Tom replied, pulling her closer. "Though I suppose we needed time to figure out who we really were together. And now we have the rest of our lives to continue figuring it out. With you having full access to my thoughts and emotions. And you having full access to mine. No secrets, no misunderstandings, just complete partnership in every possible way." Tom looked at Kira curled against his side, marveling at how perfectly they fit together despite their differences in size and species. "I love you, Kira. All of you, exactly as you are. I love you too, Tom. Forever." As they began planning their future as bonded partners, Tom realized that grabbing his tiny alien made to save her life had ultimately saved his own, leading him to discover forms of love and connection he'd never imagined possible. Sometimes the most important rescues created bonds that lasted lifetimes. 2 years after their bonding ceremony, Tom and Kira had become something of a legend aboard Epsilon Station. Their partnership had not only revolutionized engineering operations, but had also become a model for successful interspecies relationships throughout the sector. Standing in their shared workshop, watching Kira coordinate a complex repair operation while he managed the technical specifications, Tom reflected on how completely their lives had integrated. The new habitat modules are responding perfectly to the modified environmental controls, Kira reported, her voice carrying through both spoken communication and their telepathic bond. The Centauri delegation should be able to establish their cultural center without any atmospheric compatibility issues. "Outstanding," Tom replied, updating the project status. "And the Altarian traders?" "Their cargo bay modifications are complete and functioning within optimal parameters. They're particularly impressed with the miniaturized sensor arrays we developed." Tom felt a surge of pride through their bond, not just in Kira's accomplishments, but in what they'd built together. Their partnership had evolved far beyond the initial trauma bonding into something that enhanced both of their capabilities while creating innovations neither could have achieved alone. "You know," Tom said, watching Kira coordinate with their mixed human-alien engineering team, "Commander Hayes was right about us becoming a model for interspecies cooperation. We've certainly exceeded initial expectations," Kira agreed, her ears twitching with satisfaction. "Though I think our success has less to do with being different species and more to do with being genuinely compatible partners." Speaking of which, Dr. Chen wants to interview us again for her research paper on trauma bonding versus authentic relationship development. Are you comfortable with that level of academic scrutiny? Tom considered the question, noting how the idea of discussing their relationship publicly no longer caused anxiety. "Actually, yes. I think our story might help other people navigate similar situations." "Good, because I already agreed to participate. I want other Pixari to know that life-debt bonds can evolve into healthy partnerships when both parties approach them with honesty and patience." Their conversation was interrupted by an urgent communication from the station's command center. "All senior engineering staff report to emergency coordination immediately. We have incoming ships requesting emergency assistance." Tom and Kira exchanged glances, their bond carrying shared determination. "Ready for another adventure?" Tom asked. "Always, when it's with you." The Emergency Coordination Center was bustling with activity when they arrived. Commander Hayes stood at the central display, coordinating response efforts for what appeared to be a significant crisis. "What's the situation?" Tom asked. Refugee convoy from the Kepler 438 system. 23 ships carrying approximately 15,000 beings from 4 different species. Their colony was destroyed by some kind of environmental disaster, and they need temporary habitat while we arrange permanent resettlement. Kira studied the incoming ship configurations. Mixed atmospheric requirements, varying gravity preferences, and several species with specialized dietary needs. Complex logistics. Exactly. Which is why I'm assigning your team to coordinate the engineering support. We need habitat modules configured for multiple species, life support systems adapted for varying physiological requirements, and supply distribution networks that can handle different biological needs. Tom felt the familiar excitement of a challenging project. Timeline. First ships arrive in 6 hours. Full convoy in 12 hours. We need initial habitat capacity ready immediately and full accommodation within 24 hours. That's ambitious, Tom said. That's impossible with conventional approaches, Kira added. But not impossible with adaptive engineering and interspecies cooperation. Over the following hours, Tom and Kira threw themselves into the most complex logistical challenge of their partnership. The project required not just technical innovation but cultural sensitivity, as they worked to create temporary living spaces that would feel safe and comfortable for beings fleeing traumatic circumstances. The Zephyrian refugees need atmospheric humidity levels that would be dangerous for humans, Kira reported as they configured the habitat modules. But if we use sectioned environmental controls with transition chambers, we can create appropriate conditions without compromising safety for other species. And the gravitational requirements. Variable gravity generators in individual quarters, with common areas set to standard station parameters. It's energy-intensive but manageable for temporary accommodation. The work was exhausting and exhilarating, pushing both Tom and Kira to their limits while demonstrating how effectively they could collaborate under pressure. Through their telepathic bond, they shared not just communication but emotional support, helping each other maintain focus and optimism despite the urgency of the situation. You know, Tom said during a brief break between configuration adjustments, this is exactly the kind of project that would have been impossible for me to handle alone. And impossible for me to handle without your engineering expertise and leadership authority, Kira replied. We're definitely stronger together than separately, in more ways than just professional capability. Much more. When the refugee convoy arrived, Tom and Kira were ready with accommodation that exceeded expectations. The habitat modules they'd configured provided not just basic life support, but comfortable living spaces adapted to each species' specific needs and cultural preferences. This is remarkable, said Dr. Villani, the convoy's lead coordinator. I've never seen such rapid deployment of multi-species accommodation. How did you manage such complex integration in such a short time frame? Partnership, Tom replied simply. When you have someone who understands your capabilities and complements your limitations, you can accomplish things that seem impossible individually. And when that partnership includes genuine emotional investment in each other's success, Kira added, you find motivation to exceed your own expectations. The successful accommodation of the refugee convoy led to commendations from Sector Command and requests for Tom and Kira to consult on similar projects throughout the region. More importantly for them personally, it confirmed that their partnership could handle any challenge when they approached it together. I've been thinking about our future, Kira said that evening as they reviewed project reports in their shared apartment, which had evolved into a perfect blend of human and Pixar design elements. What specifically? Long-term goals, family possibilities, and whether we want to remain on Epsilon Station or explore opportunities elsewhere. Kira paused, her ears twitching with nervous excitement. Also, the medical team has confirmed that human Pixar reproduction is viable with genetic compatibility assistance. Tom felt his heart skip a beat. Are you saying you want to have children? I'm saying I want to build a complete life with you. And for Pixar, that typically includes family. But only if it's something you want to. Tom looked at Kira, seeing the hope and vulnerability in her expression. Through their bond, he could sense her dreams of raising children who would bridge their two species, creating something new and beautiful from their love. I want everything with you, Tom said, echoing words from their early relationship. including children who inherit your intelligence and kindness and my stubborn determination to fix impossible problems. They'll be extraordinary, Kira said, her smile radiant. Bilingual, bicultural, and probably too clever for their own good. Just like their mother. As they began planning their expanding future, Tom reflected on the incredible journey that had brought them to this moment. What had begun as an emergency rescue had evolved into a partnership that enhanced every aspect of their lives, proving that love could transcend any difference when nurtured with respect, patience, and genuine commitment. Any regrets about grabbing your tiny alien maid that day? Kira asked, sensing his contemplative mood through their bond. Only that I almost hesitated, Tom replied, pulling her close. Best impulse decision of my life. Mine too. Though technically, accepting employment with a lonely human engineer was my impulse decision. And look how that turned out. Kira curled against Tom's side, her small form fitting perfectly in the space that seemed designed specifically for her. We saved each other, didn't we? In every way that matters. As they settled into sleep in their shared bed, surrounded by the life they'd built together and planning for the family they would create, Tom realized that his rescue of Kira had been just the beginning of their story. The real adventure was everything they'd chosen to build together afterward. A partnership that proved love could grow from the most unexpected circumstances and flourish into something that enriched not just their own lives, but their entire community. Through their telepathic bond, he felt Kira's contentment and love flowing alongside his own, creating a harmony that would last for the rest of their lives. Sometimes the most important moment in a relationship wasn't the dramatic rescue or the romantic declaration, but the quiet realization that you'd found someone who made every day better simply by being themselves. Tom drifted off to sleep knowing that he'd grabbed his tiny alien, Maid, just in time to save not just her life, but his own heart, and that she would never stop enriching his existence in ways he was still discovering. The clinging had evolved into choosing, and the choosing had become the foundation for a love that would span species, generations, and whatever adventures the galaxy might offer them next. In the end, the best rescues were the ones that saved everyone involved, creating bonds strong enough to build entire futures upon. And as Tom and Kira began their tomorrow together, they carried with them the certainty that some connections were worth any risk, any challenge, and any amount of patient nurturing to help them grow into something beautiful.